Elizabeth, I first have to ask, kangaroos eat Cheetos?
No, not normally. That's what freaked me out about the whole situation, right?
So did it come up to you? It saw you eating Cheetos and said, "I want in on this." Did it take the bag? What exactly happened here?
I think that it actually had played that game before, to be honest. I heard something rustling behind me in the brush, and then all of a sudden the kangaroo was like right in front of my beach towel. And then, I was pulling things out of the cooler, and it just happened to be the one thing. And I don't know, it just dawned on me in the moment. I was like, maybe I'll just offer this. And I offered it. And it was such an amazing feeling because, I had never been that close to a kangaroo. And to see the picking it up out of my hand, you know,
Wow.
and it was just, I don't know. It was, anyway, so pivotal moment for sure.
I bet. I'm just used to seagulls on the beach, and you don't feed them. They're not welcomed. You get them away. So was it just the one kangaroo friend, or was he like a seagull and had other friends join him?
No, it was just the one. And you know what? Honestly, I've never even thought of that, Sherry, that, maybe there would have been something to come. That's just kind of the way that I live my life, right? I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to live it in real time. And then I'm just going to deal with the result.
I like that. I think I operate pretty similarly, actually. I can understand that. But you often talk about money as self love. So, what does that mean to you, and how did you come to redefine your relationship with money in that way?
Well, I mean, I think self love is just simply abundance. And it's like we're calling in abundance so that we can actually be our best self and so that we can connect with our higher self and go out into the world and help people from that place. And so the more we're actually giving to ourselves, then the less we actually have to go and like go and get out there, right? And so if you think about, because money and love are actually the same energetic vibration, they're the same frequency. And so you don't go get love. What happens is you receive love. And so you don't actually go get money, you actually receive money. And so the way that you actually make money, I'll say in the new paradigm, is through an act of self love where you're giving yourself what you need in the form of money, which you then have to bypass your own conditioning and worthiness and deserving, and I need to work hard and all this. But effectively, if you didn't have all that conditioning, you would have all of the money that you want because your higher self would never want to take less when it comes to the abundance that your soul is calling in.
That's interesting. When I think of abundance, and I clearly can be mistaken because the way you described abundance is not what at all what I picture in my mind, but I think like a lot, like s- stuff or like just a lot of something. I'm not quite sure what that something is, but I think of a lot of it. And the way you're describing abundance, I think I'm a little mistaken in what I'm picturing. So tell me more about abundance and what that really means and what we should think of.
Well, I think that we all want the same thing. I think that we all want to be free and we want to be in that state of feeling good and bliss. And we want to be in that state of unconditional love, which allows us to go out into the world and to truly give. And when we are truly giving from a place of unconditional, it's also filling our cup. It's like the circle is complete. And so, if we can allow money to be in that space with us and play in that frequency with us, then we're not actually going out there and having to spend effort and time and exhaustion and all of that to get money. What we're doing is we're in a state of allowing with money, very similar to when we're in a state of love. But you cannot be in that state of allowing with money until you first actually are in that state of allowing within yourself, aka self love.
So most of us are taught that money is responsibility, discipline, sacrifice. So how do we unlearn that and shift towards a mindset that connects money with self-love?
Well, those are all just concepts. And so those actually aren't money. Those are just describing the relationship that we have with money. And whenever we say like one of those, like you'll say responsibility, let's just take that for example. So that can mean something like a responsibility like, oh my God, it could be really heavy to someone. Or that can be, I have a responsibility to go out there and make money. That's fun. And so what we do is we get into a relationship with all these concepts that have nothing to do with money. And then we end up blaming money. And because we're blaming money, we're blocking money. And then we go our entire life doing with less money than we actually want, all because that's exactly what we're creating.
That is so true. I mean, we can look at discipline, the words I just said, discipline, responsibility, and really view them positively or negatively. Responsibility can be a really great thing, or it could be a burden. Discipline can be great, and kind of the saying, discipline creates freedom. If you start to get into an exercise habit, or you start to create different disciplines in your life, it could open you up to that freedom and actually feeling great. So some people think it's could be bad, but others think of it good. And what happens when to us creating, let me start again. What happens to us as people that we create this negative connotation with money? Something has to happen, whether it's when we're young adults or children, or how do we get this negative view of money or think it's a bad word and not associate it with self love?
Mm. So that all originates from we were taught that we had to do something for money. And if you have to do something, then there's always something missing. There's something that intrinsically needs to be done. And if there's something missing, then what you're doing is you're focusing on creating whatever scenario you need to create that doesn't have the missing thing. And you can't actually create lack. So an example would be, I want $1 million, and I'm going to create that in 4 months. Well, most people see nothing wrong with that. But in fact, you're creating from a state of lack because you're agreeing to wait. You're saying that you're not good enough right now for $1 million to come to you. I had a question inside. Actually, it was more of like a goal inside the Spiritual Investor Club the other day, and someone said, I just want to be in a state of where I don't even think about money. I don't want to worry about money. I don't even want to have it as part of my thought process. And that was really great. I was so glad that she shared that because you can't actually create that. That's a feeling. And you wouldn't be worried about money if you weren't missing money. So it's really sort of a mismatch. It's like what people are doing is they're actually throwing an arrow at the wall, but they're throwing it at the wrong target and they're doing it over and over again, not realizing like there's this spiritual kind of like, okay, I'm creating my world. I know that. But yet I have these circumstances over here. I have the economy, which is going to hell, and I have my money situation. It's like, where is the convalescence between those two? That's where the gap is.
So how does it go from, I mean, how do we make that shift? Like, I want to make $1 million in this period of time, or I want to make any amount of money, or I want to be out of debt, or I want to have this amount of money in my savings account. How do we make that shift from thinking that way to essentially the way you're describing, as being more open to it and not looking at the money as the destination or the lack thereof?
Well, the money can be the destination. And so you want to say, okay, well, this is what I want. That's what we came here to do, is to create. So you want to have the money as the destination. Let's just use the example of the $1 million. But so the $1 million, that is that when you think of that, that feels really great. And that idea, and you feel that energy in your body. That's your higher self. What happens though is that after that, what if you don't let it go, then what happens is you are just your conditioned self comes in and needs you to prove that, or needs to understand how you're going to get that, or needs to have a plan. So effectively think of it like your higher self is the one that created it. It's already created, and the old version of yourself is continuing to sort of downgrade it into something that you can see and feel and understand and kind of be comfortable with. And that's what you're creating. And then at the end, you go, why am I not getting what I want? If you had originally actually taken the $1,000,000 and been able, and this is through, I'm not saying this is easy. This is through, that's why I teach money through practices. It is creating practices that actually incorporate your circumstances and your situation from your life. To be able, you're literally training yourself to be able to make a commitment to your higher self. And so going back to this responsibility, when I think of responsibility, I think of that's fun because I am now in responsibility to what my higher self actually came up with and created. Now, what I'm doing is I am living into the new version using space. I create using space rather than needing to understand. Because the moment you need to understand something, we go back to that original I need to do something. I need to figure it out. Therefore, something's missing.
And I think that's where I am in the understanding. So I understand what you're explaining to me. I guess where how do you make the connection or how do you make the shift? What are the practices you can start implementing? Because it would be really difficult to go from, your the original example of I want to make this amount of money in X amount of time and I focus on the lack to being wide open to listening to your higher self. So how do we kind of baby step our way to having a new money mentality and really treating money as a form of self-love?
Mm. Well, okay, so let's go through it. So the first thing is you have to not see it as difficult because it's
Okay.
not difficult. And we don't know that it's difficult because we've never done it before. That's already the old version of ourselves putting a category on it, right? So we start with like noticing because it all comes down to awareness. We notice our language around things. We notice when we think something's too expensive. We notice when we can't invest because we have to, pay credit card debt or something like that. So that's the first thing is that you have to actually get yourself into the place of the creator because no plan that is going to get you what you want comes from what you already knew. So you have to do that. One of the things that I teach people how to do, and I call it breaking the structure. And so what this is, and this happens accidentally in people's lives. It's just, I like to recreate it because it's an accelerated path. So you know how like something will happen in your life, like you'll get fired or there could be a death in the family or something like that, where it completely rearranges your life. And what it does is typically on the other side of that, you'll be able to see the beauty or the newness that came in when you're looking back, right? Now, the reason that happens is because the energy, the momentum has stopped on that frequency that you're on, and you have been involuntarily put to a different frequency. It's like you got fired. You got to figure it out, right? And you hear this story all the time. Oh, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, right? Well, okay, so it's put you on a different frequency. So what I like to teach people and what I think that people can implement in their lives right now that is actually very easy is stop doing what you're doing right now with money. Whatever you're doing right now, stop seeing it as right or wrong. Stop seeing it as getting better at this. Stop seeing it as anything having to do and completely shift the train track because whatever you're doing right now is keeping you on the frequency of the money that you have now. And if you want more money, that's literally like the fastest accelerated hack. And you see people do this all the time. All the time. People they come into the spiritual investor and they're like, oh my God, I have made so much money. It's only been 3 weeks. Well, great. I love that. But then you know what the next question typically is? How do I keep this going? Okay, the moment you ask how to keep this going, you have literally gone back to the 3D plan. Why? No, what you have to do is you have to go, look at me. You have to meet that new person who's like, holy shit, I just made so much money in 3 weeks. I know that it's like, it feels awkward, but you have to, that is your commitment and that is your responsibility. It's not to the money, it's to you because that's the new version of you. And that's what people don't do.
In that example, in that That makes sense. So it's almost like once you become aware of it and
Hmm.
start acting on it, like you're like, all right, well, what did I do? I need to keep doing that. You just broke the flow, if you will. You broke the cycle of it because it became awareness. And now it's more of a chore or a job that you have to keep repeating what you were doing in order to make the money instead of listening to yourself as the guide and just acting that way.
Exactly. Exactly. It's equivalent to if you're in a game, if you're in a basketball game and you just made a three pointer and then someone throws you the ball again, are you going to drop the ball? Because that's what people do. They drop the ball. No, you're the person that just made the three pointer. That's why I say throw away all the 3D plans because you have to make decisions only from the point of a creator, that person who just got thrown the ball after they made a three pointer, because that's the only version of you that you are. And when you learn to not to drop the past, which is another thing that I teach people how to do, you are your most powerful in every moment. And once you amplify that and you begin to show up, like right now, there's nothing that exists in this moment except for how can I provide value here? Like I train myself, I literally manage my energy to how can I show up as the most powerful in every moment. And I don't always do it. I'm not perfect at it, but my level of awareness is high enough where I'm like, look, let me look at this. I'm always willing to look at it, and I don't look at it from a place of I did something wrong. I look at it from a place of I get to live this life and I'm creating it. And it's to my advantage that if someone says something to me, I'm actually going to look at myself. I'm not going to look at them. I'm not going to get into blame and deflection. And I do not get caught up in circumstances.
So you've said before that energetics matter just as much as the numbers. So how do we tap into that energetic frequency of abundance without falling into the trap of toxic positivity or financial denial?
Yeah. Well, I would say the toxic positivity. I love your language on that. When I see people fall into that, sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, I don't care about money. I have a beautiful family. I have my health. I have blah, blah, blah. Well, great. I love that, but you don't live in an or world. You're literally source. You live in an and world. Why are you saying that? Why are you choosing, right? So you can kind of get into that. You can get into a little bit. It's almost like an ego arrogance kind of thing that seems very spiritual. This I need to serve everybody for free. No, you don't. Actually, you're in more of alignment if what's happening is your space of serving the value that you give is then equally matched with receiving the money, because then what does it do? It allows you to go out there and give more value. Like that makes sense, right? Otherwise it's like the equation is broken, right? So what one of the things that I see, and this is just, I mean, I've been running the spiritual investor for 7 years, so it's like thousands of people that I've been able to help. So I've got some data on this, which is helpful. Um, if you get someone who is really, really connected to, it could be beautiful spiritual practices. I mean, it could be do yoga every day, it could be breath work, it could be sitting in a sauna, it could be eating healthy, all of this stuff. What I see is there becomes like this, almost like this creation of bliss in all of these areas, and it is actually an entrapment of avoidance when it comes to money. Because what it does is allows us to feel so blissfully happy over here that we're not really looking at the other part, which would make us happy. And then a lot of times people go, well, how come I'm giving so much value? How come I'm not making any money? Because you haven't actually switched your money frequency. So you're doing a really good job because you're matching your frequency and bringing in the maximum that you can right there. And so I would say that's probably the number one thing that I look for.
So is that kind of like people faking it
Mm,
then?
No, not faking at all. Like living a beautiful, wonderful life, but carrying a low level It's normalized. Like I have these particular concepts that I teach, and one of them is money normalization. And what that is that's almost like an embodiment of a money standard that we have accepted as being real, but it's actually an illusion. And so what happens is they're living to the level of their money normalization, not realizing that they're just recreating based on that. So, no, you can feel very, very abundant, but if you feel like you don't have all the money that you want, that is your higher self trying to call in abundance. And so, don't ignore that because there's not anything you can't like replace it. Like abundance, it's all the same energy. What you can do is you can live a life and you can say like live on the street if you want to. And if you truly truly are like, i don't I don't care about money, the money that I need, I get the food that I need and I get all of that. Like if you are so blissfully happy with that, then you are wealthy as well.
What are some signs that someone is not using their money in a self-loving way?
Mm, I would say I what I do is I hate to go to like habits and oh you're overspending or you're doing this, because part of the work that I do is I'm trying to help people get beyond feeling bad, and I'm trying to get to help to actually teach in a way that doesn't leverage fear. Because so many people, when they talk about money and they're trying to help people with money, what they do is they tap right into the fear and they go, you need to save 10%. You need to be investing 10%. Well, that's not wrong. Like I was an energy trader. I worked on a trading floor for over a decade. I can tell you that's a solid financial principle. But when I tell someone that and they've heard it 350 times already, it does nothing for them except make them feel like shit. And so I'm really reluctant to say, here's what you're doing wrong. Here's what you should avoid. Here's your three tips and tricks. I'm also very much in awareness that I don't have your answers. I'm a guide for you, and I can definitely I can see that higher version of you, and I can hold that for you until you can step into it. But you have the answers within you. You absolutely know what you are avoiding right now with money. You absolutely know what you are not looking at, because if when you check your account, you feel bad, so you don't look at it. Like you don't need me to tell you that.
So then when you're sitting down with someone or speaking with someone that you're coaching and working with, what are some of the initial questions you ask them to get an idea of where they stand currently in their relationship with money or how they feel about it?
Tell me what is the number one thing that's bothering you about money, because I just want to know them. Because whatever they're doing in one area of their life, they're doing in another area of their life. And so we see the same stuff comes up in relationships and the same stuff comes up in money. And so whatever's bothering them is a through way for me to figure out where I can help. It's going to differ from everyone.
So that's interesting because that's where my mind was going too. So there's so many relationships we say, money is the cause of divorce, like one of the biggest causes of divorce, for example. Would you say no, money's kind of the scapegoat of it and there were other issues? If you're saying that, money's kind of representative of other issues you're having, what's your thought on that?
Yeah. I don't believe that money is the cause of divorce. I don't believe that sex is the cause of divorce. I don't believe all these things that are like in the top tier. Um, I believe that those are the hot button things that we get to blame everything on. You know, if you're in a relationship and you're not happy and you have $1 million, it might last for a little while longer, but you're still not going to want to wake up and look at that person every day. That's the reality of it, right? You're just kicking the can down the road. I believe that people don't stay in relationships because they're not actually willing to look at the thing in themselves that is missing, that they are putting as a responsibility on the other human. And that could be in the form of, I don't have it within me, therefore I can't give it to you, and that you need it, but I can't give it to you. We don't recognize that, or we recognize it too late. Or I need you to do this for me, therefore I will feel better, then I will do something for you. It is the acceptance of the transactional nature of relationships that causes relationships to break.
And just like how we view money, I mean, as transactional, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you use it, you spend it, you get something, someone gives it to you because of you earned it, or you worked for it, or you but and that's kind of, money's treated the same way, and so it's everything just becomes transactional. So if your relationship becomes transactional, then money then falls into that as well. So you can see how it kind of all gets kind of in the tornado together, if you will.
You're exactly right.
So for someone that's stuck in this cycle, that has, either a negative relationship with money, or they feel like they just can't make enough, or they're overspending, or they're avoiding, what's the first step they can take to reconnect with their finances through a lens of self-love?
That's a great question. So, where I would start with it is I would pull back from the circumstances as much as you can, whatever practice you have in your life. And by the way, all these practices that I said people stay in bliss, I do those too, right? Like, that's wonderful that we do that. So, whatever you can do to get yourself into a state where you can actually just go back to that childlike version of you and go, what do I really want? Like, if I had a magic wand, what do I want? Right? Because then that's giving you is that's giving you a starting place. And then what I would do is I would actually look at all the things in your life that aren't actually rolling up to that. And then what I would do is I would go one level deeper and I would say, okay, well, I might not be able to change this one right now, but here's my plan how I'm going to change that. So what you're doing is you are creating a plan in the 3D, because we came here to live in the 3D. But the difference is your plan is born from the big thing that you want. And you're designing your life based on that thing that you want, rather than what most people do is they live their life based on circumstances, and then they build wealth with whatever scraps are left over. It's like, oh, I'll invest. If I have an extra $1,000, I'll invest. That is not self-love. That is 100% leaving you behind. If you want to practice from self-love and you want to create the goals, you have to start with yourself and then make a plan for everything to actually roll up to that. And then on top of that, do not, whatever you do, and this is where commitment and responsibility comes in, make a commitment and a responsibility to yourself to learn and discover ways that you do these things as an act of, I enjoy this. I'm getting to do this. Do not, whatever you do, do not fit it back into that 3D, I have to work, I have to do that, because that's the equivalent of the example that I gave you about the people make so much money in the first 3 weeks and then they're like, how do I keep this up? So catch yourself when you go back into the 3D with it.
So let's talk about intentional investing, because you had alluded to it for a second. So obviously not just in stocks or real estate, but in your own joy, growth, and peace of mind. What does that look like in practice?
The way that I manage my energy is so the business, right? So my whole intention is that I believe that wealth is actually going to be in the hands of those who have greater consciousness in the future. That is like a fundamental belief that I've carried for decades. So everything that I do rolls up to, how can I be sort of, I'm just a cog in the wheel, really. Like, I'm out here connecting with people who are expanding their consciousness, and I'm helping them be wealthy so that they can go out and do greater things in the world. So my connection to that, my understanding of that, my love for that, what it does is it formulates my commitment. My commitment is that I work through the business or my podcast or anything like that. But really, the reality is the rubber hits the road with who I am. Now, I run my business the same exact way as I teach. I live my life in the same way. Like it's just all right, one and the same, right? You're going to meet me on a Saturday and you're going to meet me on a Wednesday, and I'm going to say the same thing to you. So what's happened is my life is very effortless because I actually just literally have a series of practices that I enjoy. Just like even before this, I did a sitting practice and I played the piano for a few minutes because that's how I stop thought. So it's like I did that so I can be an open conduit. Then after this, I'll go do something else. And then, I have another meeting in an hour after that. And so do you see what I'm saying? It's almost like I'm just playing is what I'm doing. And you can play if it's all rolling up to what you want. And you can almost like go through and not think about it, which takes us back to you want to let it go, right? That's how I let it go as I manage my energy as a function of the commitment rather than having to rethink it all the time.
Well, it's kind of like the saying to, do what you love and the money will follow, right? I mean, it's doing what you love first, being your true self first, and then when you do that, the money follows. But what do you say to people that are like, I'm practicing what you're preaching. I'm doing it and it's just not working, or it's not coming. The money's not coming, or, and, things might start to be getting really tight and uncomfortable in the household and all of that stuff, right? Because life still happens, bills still come, all of that. So what do you say to someone that it's not yet clicking for them?
That's a function of receiving. So with money, you actually learn how to be an open money conduit, right? So you learn how to actually go out there and be able to give value because the value is just flowing through us. And then you also have to learn how to receive it though, right? Because a lot of times you see people where it's like people offer them money and they're like, no, 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 that's okay. Oh, I'll just take half that. Or they won't ask for money or something like that, right? It's an entanglement that we have to the relationship with money that has nothing to do with money. They have a relationship with what it means to them to ask for money. And it could be for a multitude of reasons. It could be a worthiness thing. It could be that they don't even really feel like they're providing value. Like they could have changed someone's life, but they don't see it as value because it was fun and it didn't feel like work. I would say if you really want to look at your ability to receive, actually, you have to be able to look at yourself in those moments when you feel everybody's got a space in their body where they feel it when money comes up. When that comes up, you have to actually really, really look at what are you feeling and thinking in that moment because that's the revealing of the illusion in that moment.
If someone's listening right now and they're feeling ashamed or disconnected from their money story, what's one message you want them to walk away with today?
Money has nothing to do with you.
So there's a get to the root of the issue. It's not the money, it's a bigger issue.
Yeah, how can you feel ashamed about something that has nothing to do with you? It doesn't even make sense. That's an illusion. It's a lie.
How did we have this lie? Because every adult, right, even children, everyone has a feeling about money. When I'll often ask, when you hear the word money, what comes to mind? And usually it's not positive, right?
Mhm.
Where's that? How's that happen?
Well, I would say we have to drop that usually is not positive because it depends on who you're talking to. There are circles and circles and circles of people. I mean, I've been in rooms where it's like, multimillionaires and they don't even talk about money. All they talk about is creativity because they're already in an understanding that creativity is the source and that money follows. So it depends. So what we have to do is we ourselves, and we all do it, we have to stop categorizing because the moment we categorize, then what we're doing is we're trying to we're putting ourselves in a box and then we're saying, teach me how to climb out. So that's the first thing is that everybody's relationship to money is their relationship to money and has zero to do with you. And money is just ones and zeros. Money means nothing about you. So if you feel ashamed about money, then know that it's not about money. There's something missing within you. There's something that you are not giving yourself. And you actually have to see that, or you're never going to be able to rise to that frequency where that money is that you're wanting.